The America First and MAGA doctrine of isolationism is self-defeating and poses the greatest threat to the United States itself. This is because the U.S. is not a self-sufficient nation-state, but rather functions as the world's metropolis, a global financial, innovative, and political hub whose prosperity is inextricably linked to its deep integration with and leadership of the international system. Withdrawing from this role would trigger a catastrophic collapse at the center of this system. The MAGA doctrine, as described, advocates for the U.S. to step back from its global leadership responsibilities, shed associated burdens, and focus inward on domestic development. This vision is fundamentally flawed because it misdiagnoses the nature of modern American power. America's current preeminence is not built on autarky, but on a position at the apex of a globalized network. The U.S. and the world are locked in a relationship of mutual dependency, and severing those ties would harm America the most. The world's metropolis concept to explain the sources of U.S. strength. First, America's innovative economy is fueled by the unique privilege of the U.S. dollar as the world's reserve currency. Policies like quantitative easing, money printer goes brrr, flood markets with capital without causing immediate hyperinflation because global demand for dollars absorbs the excess. The dollar itself is framed as America's key export. Second, the U.S. attracts the world's best talent precisely because it is the metropolis where money and opportunity are concentrated. Third, it remains the world's largest market due to this limitless capital, and because global processes are intrinsically tied to American systems, all roads lead to Rome. Crucially, this entire structure is predicated on a unipolar world order with the U.S. at the helm. The prosperity, as well as the significant social challenges facing America, are direct outcomes of this metropolitan role. The loss of manufacturing jobs is likened to a capital city offshoring production to cheaper regions. Widespread poverty and inequality are typical of a metropolis where newcomers struggle to ascend the socioeconomic ladder. The dominance of service sector jobs is normal for a global financial and bureaucratic center. Even iconic American products like the MacBook cannot be made or fully developed within the U.S. They are the result of a global production landscape orchestrated from the American metropolis, which retains only high-value functions like management, marketing, and finance. The U.S.-led global system is compared to a massive, unprofitable multinational corporation whose lavish headquarters, the metropolis, thrives on high turnover and continuous operation. While the system runs, the center enjoys prosperity, funds grand projects, and rewards its elite. However, once supply chains are disrupted and foreign markets are lost, precisely what isolationist policies would do, the headquarters suffers the most severe blow. The collapse of transnational ties devastates the core more than the peripheries. This is compared to Russia's experience after the Soviet Union's fall, where the metropolis of the Second World endured the hardest impact from the loss of empire and integrated economic space. This framework to specific MAGA-style policies, suggesting they are unworkable and would accelerate collapse. It references a perceived rift between MAGA purists and the Trump administration, noting that upon taking office, Trump acted as a corporate crisis manager, cutting costs, optimizing staff, and shutting down ventures deemed unprofitable, all under the America First banner. However, Trump's attempted perestroika, restructuring, ran into the immovable reality of the metropolitan system. Imposing tariffs on internationally co-produced goods is absurd, as a metropolis cannot recklessly disrupt the intricate supply chains that sustain it. Mass deportation of migrants is impossible, as a metropolis depends on a continual influx of labor and fresh talent from its provinces, other countries, to function and thrive. Withdrawing from international affairs and institutions is suicidal. It would lead provinces, allied and dependent nations, to break away sequentially, creating a cascading effect that dismantles the American-led order. Attempting to drastically cut borrowing threatens to induce an economic depression, collapsing the consumer-driven model that relies on ample credit and liquidity. Faced with these systemic constraints and political resistance from the entrenched deep state, Trump, and by extension the isolationist project, was forced to revert to the old, inertia-driven course. This course, while avoiding an immediate shock-induced collapse, is itself steering Pax Americana toward fragmentation and the United States toward long-term disaster and deep decline. The central paradox, therefore, is that both the pursuit of radical isolationism and the maintenance of the unsustainable status quo are presented as paths leading to the erosion of American power, with the former posing a more immediate and severe risk of triggering a metropolitan collapse from which the U.S. would struggle to recover.